Hey, welcome to Film Fanatics, three film geeks discussing movies new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
Joe, tell us about Ant-Man.
I will. Ant-Man is the most recent Marvel Comics movie from the MCU, as Dan just said. It is based on the characters Scott Lang and Hank Pym. That will be the second Ant-Man and the original Ant-Man, respectively. And it's produced by Marvel Studios with Walt Disney, and it is the 12th installment now. Can you believe it? The film was directed by Peyton Reed, with a screenplay by Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish and Adam McKay and Paul Rudd, so there was a lot of writing here. Fairly obvious, I think. And it's got a big cast. We've got some great people. Rudd, obviously, is Scott, the new Ant-Man. We've got Evangeline Lilly. We've got Corey Stoll from House of Cards, is the villain Yellow Jacket. Also some greats, Bobby Cannavale, Michael Pena, T.I., and we've got Michael Douglas, of course, as Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man. In Ant-Man, Lang must help defend Pym's Ant-Man technology and the plot, this heist to steal it back despite worldwide ramifications. Essentially, you've got to stop Corey Stoll because he's going to become Yellow Jacket and he's evil Ant-Man, take over the world, and there's a twist about who he's going to sell it to, but it's pretty basic superhero stuff, honestly. I think that's the thing that stands out the most about this movie is that in terms of scale, it really is a smaller story. Not just in terms of the hero and his powers, but it is a smaller scale story, so it's not quite as world-ending as you might think, and it's also fairly basic in terms of the story. You see Scott as this down-on-his-luck hero who has to become a better person, and this is just kind of a way for him to achieve that. Did you guys see it in 3D?
Yes.
Okay, I saw it in 2D, so maybe you guys can let me know. I thought the effects in this movie were good, but I thought that the shrinking itself I've seen done better in other movies. Honestly, that's one thing I noticed. I was actually more impressed by the early CGI touch-ups they did to Michael Douglas's face, which is probably some of the best I've ever seen for that. Cool. And I was thinking, wow, that is really impressive. But they put more of their budget into that scene than they did with the ant stuff. Not saying it was bad, the effects were cool, but I honestly think I've seen it done better in other films. I do think Rudd does well as the main character. I think he always is good. I mean, he does a well-rounded character here. He's still got his comedy, but I think works well in the action setting. The big issue in the beginning is that there are some pacing struggles in the tone. I think you can tell there's some of Edgar Wright here, but there's obviously a lot of other ideas, so it takes a while for the movie to really find itself. But as the movie builds momentum, it gets better. And I felt like it just kept getting better as it went on. But the first, 20 minutes or so was very hit or miss. I wasn't sure it was going. The only real big issue, though, I have with it is, even though I think the villain in this movie, obviously was portrayed well in terms of his villainy, and he looked awesome, he had a cool design, Marvel brings us yet another generic villain with very little motivation or backstory, which I'm getting a little tired of. However, overall, Ant-Man is a surprisingly good time with the troubled production history behind it. I was expecting this movie to be a lot worse. I did enjoy it. It's not the best for Marvel, but it's still pretty good. I leave it with a B+.
Okay. Well, it's easy, I feel like, to make the Guardians of the Galaxy comparison with this movie because you've both properties are very untested in the marketplace. So far, it doesn't relate that much to the MCU, even though, obviously, it's going there. But even to a non-comic book fan like myself, though, that doesn't know that Ant-Man is, kind of whatever, just the idea is so ridiculous that, like most people, I was kind of weary how it would even come off. I am a big Paul Rudd fan, though, as I think many people are, so I was, at the very least, intrigued. And sure enough, Rudd is really the thing most holding Ant-Man together. I think he does a bang-up job here. He adds the perfect amount of humor, confusion, and badassery to the character, much like Chris Pratt did for Guardians. I do wish some of the other cast members were so well cast, though. I thought Evangeline Lilly kind of missed the mark. The father-daughter stuff between her and Michael Douglas, I was kind of whatever about. Michael Pena, who is normally great, he's okay here. I think he's given lines that make him try way too hard to punch them up and be funny. Mm-hmm. So that sort of missed the mark a little bit. I didn't hate the villain. I guess I do see what you're saying, that this is the typical now MCU villain.
Don't get me
when
wrong.
It comes down to it.
It was a great performance and everything, and I liked the villain. He's not bad. It's just I wish there was a little more to him. Mm-hmm. I'm getting really tired of these one-dimensional characters.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I do agree with it. It's not something I thought about while watching it, but you're right. But I think as well, the film is fairly derivative, but it's a lot of fun. I had a really good time watching it. The CGI was a bit of a hit or miss, though.
You noticed that too?
Yeah, absolutely. definitely when he was, big and then little, but then certain other things, like when he is little, I don't know, even the design of the ants sometimes I was kind of like,
Too
I don't
fake,
know.
right?
Yeah. So, I knocked it down a little bit for that. I'm right under you. I give it a B. I do think it's certainly not the worst we've seen from the MCU.
No.
I would say it's kind of like in the middle of the pack.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
One issue with the whole father-daughter thing with Lily and Douglas, I didn't think it was too bad. But the thing is, they drastically altered Pym's character for the movie, because the reason why he's not the main character is because you can't really do Hank Pym from the comics and make him likable. So that might have been kind of a spitball, spur-of-the-moment thing.
So they sort of were just insinuating, okay, this guy was a bad father.
Because the whole,
this and that.
the whole Wasp thing with his wife,
right.
that would have been totally different. So,
okay.
So to be honest, they were really juggling with some concepts that were fairly original.
Okay.
I give them that.
That's interesting to know. I did like the scene, though, where he sort of reveals what happened to the mother.
Yes, and that's totally...
And that was all made up for the movie?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Justin?
The MCU, for me anyways, draws a lot of comparisons to the Titanic. It's a massive vessel with a lot of promise, but also kind of gets crushed under its own ego. And, like the Titanic, starts heading on a route to disaster. And that disaster is named Ant-Man. Here's just a few of the many, many issues I had with this movie. Mm-hmm. To start, it's an Edgar Wright movie, directed by a man desperately trying to be Edgar Wright, Peyton Reed, who gave us such wonderful movies such as Yes Man.
Yes Man was alright.
I never actually saw it.
Yeah, it's fine.
I mean, it clearly reeks of being an Edgar Wright movie, and Peyton Reed's just trying to put on his best impersonation. If it's anything, it's a cheap mockery. Here's where we'll give the movie points. I did like the visual aspect of it. I liked when he shrunk, and I feel like when he was actually Ant-Man, the movie actually got kind of interesting. I thought the heist movie points of it were incredibly dry. I thought Rudd was flatter than flat as a protagonist.
Wow.
Nah.
Okay, keep going.
I'm sorry, when we're going comedy actors turned superheroes, Rudd doesn't even come close to Chris Pratt.
Well, to be fair, I think he was doing a little more dramatic of a turn, though.
I don't agree. I feel like it was Paul Rudd once again playing Paul Rudd.
I think it was very different than his...
All right, it sounds like we're going to have a lot to discuss, so let's let Justin finish,
Go
and
ahead,
then we'll talk.
But alongside that, I liked Michael Pena's character, but his entire supporting cast is cardboard, and I would argue also bordering on racist caricatures. And alongside that, I never felt like the stakes in this movie were that high. Even Daredevil on Netflix had bigger stakes than Ant-Man. And it was such a more grounded storyline. Phase 2 goes out with a whimper. I give Ant-Man a C+.
Should be an F.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only thing I heard that you liked about it was the visual component.
And Michael Pena.
And Michael Pena was okay.
Michael Pena is good.
D+.
The story does get better. I'll give you that one, Joe. But it's...
Based on that
it was
review,
one of those things that just incredibly infuriated me because the stakes are just never that high.
Okay, all right. Justin, I agree. The stakes are not that high, but that's because they're going for something different. I mean,
They're really not.
It's more of a contained heist movie. I mean, it's
a heist movie, but it's also basically rehashing Iron Man.
Not entirely. I think that
Really?
Look.
Entrepreneur going after his own weapons?
Well, yes, but it's slightly
That's
different.
the plot of Iron Man.
Yes, but instead of being kicked out of his old company, there's something else entirely. You see, because this time, instead of just dealing to one terrorist or one villain, we have another bigger one involved.
Which doesn't come out until way, way, way late, too late in the game.
But we're
not even entirely sure what they're doing, which
Justin,
is even stranger.
They pretty much spell out how dangerous the technology can be, and you're right, they are recycling some of the same concepts, but, I mean, the stakes ultimately do get high based upon what the villain's actually doing. His particular goals are basically, I'll get rich and I'll be awesome because I'm evil, but what he's doing, that's still pretty big stakes, pretty standard, could potentially be world catastrophic.
Potentially, but not quite there. Just...
Look,
the entire stakes of this movie is dependent on a maybe.
They demonstrate how dangerous the technology can be several times in the movie based on the villain's actions. So I think they could show this could potentially be bad if it gets out.
Potentially.
That's sort of how I took it. If it fell into the wrong hands,
So
classic comic book movie staple.
I mean, it's not the same as like you're right. It's not the Chitauri, the Skrulls. They're the Skrulls. I'm sorry. If they're coming down to New York to eat it, okay, that's not the same as the Avengers. You're right. But you're right. It is smaller scale, like Iron Man. If you think about it, Iron Man was much smaller scale than this. That's fine. It's a more grounded story. That's what people liked Iron Man. Maybe that's what we're going for this time. Was it done as well? No. But I don't think you can... I'm actually glad that Marvel did something different and didn't just try to blow it out of proportion again. So you got to give them credit for that. What do you think, Matt?
I'm still stuck on everything else. What else did you like about this movie? Because, I like this movie way more than you, but yet I'm only a shade above the grade, which is confusing to me.
Well, I mean...
What were the other positives?
The story is fun. I did like the camaraderie between Rudd and Michael Douglas.
Okay.
And I did like a lot of the flashbacks that sort of hint at the overall arcing timeline of the MCU and hinting at where we may be heading. Like I said, I feel like the story does get better. The action sequences I did really like. Evangeline Lilly I could do without.
Yeah, I thought she was miscast, but that's fine.
She's okay.
All right. Well, okay, so there's some positives. Because honestly, Justin, your review was negative, C+. I just wanted to hear some positives. That makes sense now. Okay.
So this is the worst MCU
film.
Far and away.
I can't get over the Paul Rudd, though. I thought he was great in this.
He was awful.
I think he's the best part of the movie. Joe?
I liked it. I thought he was doing something closer to being a straight man. I don't think he was as funny as Pratt.
No.
Going for comedy, but I don't think he was going for constant laughs. I thought he was going for more grounded,
that's just
serious
it. Rudd
character.
is never the constant laughs guy. He's always the straight man, which is why
Which
putting
is why it
him
works for
front
I
and
don't
center
agree
for a
with
comedy
that.
movie.
I thought he was very funny in This Is 40.
And he was a straight man.
He did
The
a lot
mirror
of-
up to his butt, that's not a straight scene. That was pure comedy Rudd.
Yeah, he's not always
Straight
a
man can still have a couple quirky bits here and there.
That was a pretty broad joke. I mean, I don't agree that he's always the straight man. I think he can go for a joke as well as anybody. I think Chris Pratt is a more naturally charismatic comedian and frontman.
Also, it's two entirely different styles of humor. Rudd tries to go more for deadpan.
Sometimes.
No, I mean, like, that's basically why all of his back and forth with Penny are funny.
I think it depends on the movie. In Delivery Man, Chris Pratt was the straight man.
In the case of...
You know what I mean?
In the case of Deadpan, I was referring primarily to Ant-Man as the prime example.
Ant-Man versus Guardians?
Yeah.
Okay. Because Chris Pratt is not always the comedy go-to either.
Well, to be fair, though, Guardians was a much better written, more balanced movie.
Guardians is a much better movie pretty much across the board. Mm-hmm. I won't argue that. I thought Paul Rudd really held this movie together. I do like the back and forth with him and Douglas. I think their chemistry is a lot better than the whole thing with Evangeline Lilly. And I like her a lot. I thought she was great as Tariel, the made-up hobbit. But, I'm surprised by that. And then I'm surprised you really like the CGI and the effects and stuff.
I mean, with the exception of without giving anything away, the climax,
mm-hmm.
I was relatively on board. The only reason I'm citing the climax as an issue is because we get there and then it gets resolved really, really quickly. Like, way too quickly.
I suppose that's true.
They could have made it more interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
There, but
I feel
But
like
I
it's
do
also...
get over the over 2 hour... Like, the Avengers movies are too long. So I didn't mind necessarily that it wrapped up not as long and drawn out as some other Marvel movies.
And I would also argue it might be because the Disney takeover, where I feel like every single one of these movies that they've had since then, they've been trying to find ways to sort of...
less dark.
Less dark. Oh, this is getting too scary, so we have to have quirky CGI ant running around as comedy joke. And then he's the family pet.
Hey, the towards the end there, it got incredibly dark and depressing. So, but hey, high stakes, Justin.
I would agree.
High stakes.
I still don't think they were that high.
I think the end...
Seriously.
I think, Justin, you have to admit, though, the climax, pretty high stakes.
And then it gets Disney-fied.
Because it's a Marvel movie and you have to have it. Did you want Ant-Man to die? Sorry. Is that how you prefer it to go?
I'm just saying, if you're going to be a superhero,
what's the alternative?
you got to build the stakes. Avengers, what happens in the first 10 minutes? Loki steals the Tesseract.
It's
This? Oh no!
That's okay.
The
That's
company was
it's
mean to me.
Avengers.
It's an unfair comparison because the Avengers are known characters. Everyone already had a movie. You had to introduce Ant-Man and everything that goes with him first. You're not going to have an exciting 10 minutes in the first part of the movie. You're just
No,
not.
but you gotta at least set up the stakes in some regard.
To be fair, the stakes.
I mean,
were-
okay. Better example. Guardians of the Galaxy. First 10 minutes. Star-Lord's mom dies. He gets abducted. What happens in Ant-Man? Oh, the company doesn't like me. Poor
Well,
baby.
As we've already discussed, Guardians does everything better than Ant-Man, so let's wrap it up there. And we keep getting subscribers on our channel. We definitely appreciate that, so keep them coming. And you can check us out on the Facebook group as well, Film Fanatics with an exclamation point, and our Twitter feed at Film Fanatics Pod.